Chapter 6. By the time I step foot in the dining tent, it's already 9 o'clock. Ella has been gone several hours, and I have succeeded only a little in distracting myself from this fact. I know intellectually that she is not in danger, but then my mind has always been my fiercest adversary. All the day's compounding uncertainties have led to a mounting apprehension in my body, the experience of which recalls the sensation of sandpaper against my skin. The worst uncertainties are the ones I cannot kill or control. In the absence of action, I am forced instead to marinate in these thoughts, the anxiety upbraiding me more and every minute to corroding my nerves. So thorough is this excoriation that my entire body is rendered an open wound in the aftermath, so raw that even a metaphorical breeze feels like an attack. The mental exertion necessary to withstand these simple blows leaves me worse than irritable and quick to anger. More than anything, these exhausting efforts make me want to be alone. I don't know what's happening anymore. I scan the dining tent as I head toward the unusually short serving line, searching for familiar faces. The interior space isn't nearly as large as it once was. A great portion of it has been sectioned off to use for temporary sleeping arrangements. Still, the room is emptier than I expect. There are only a few people occupying the scattered dining tables, none of whom I know personally, save one, Sam. She's sitting alone with a stack of papers and a mug of coffee, fully absorbed in her reading. I make my way through the tables to stand in the short serving line, accepting, after a brief wait, my foil bowl of food. I choose AC for myself in a far corner of the room, sitting down with some reluctance. I waited as long as I could to have this meal with Ella, and eating alone feels a bit like admitting defeat. It is perhaps maudlin to ruminate on this fact, so imagine myself abandoned. Still, it's how I feel. Even the dog is gone. It disturbs me to think I might trade the relative quiet of this room for its regular chaos, if only to have Ella by my side. It's an unnerving thought, one that does nothing but magnify my childish longing. I tear back the foil lid and stare at its contents, a single gelatinous mass of something resembling stir-fry. I set my plastic fork on the table, sit back in my seat. Noria was right about one thing at least. This is unsustainable. After finding someone to take the dog, I spent the afternoon catching up on digital correspondence, most of which required fielding calls and perusing reports from the Supreme Kids, all of whom are dealing with different and equally concerning dilemmas. Luckily, Nazira helped us set up a more sophisticated network here at the sanctuary, which has since made it easier to be in touch with our international counterparts. The sanctuary has been great for many things, but there has been, since the beginning, a dearth of accessible technology. Omega Point, by comparison, was home to formidable futuristic tech that was impressive even by the re-establishment standards. This quality of tech, I realized, was something I'd taken for granted. As it turns out, not all rebel headquarters are built equally. When I realized the sanctuary was to be our new permanent home, I insisted we make changes. This was when Noria and I first discovered the depth of our mutual dislike. Unlike Sam, Noria is quick to wound. She is injured too easily by perceived slights against her camp and her leadership, which has made it difficult to push for change, progress. Still, I pushed. We took as much hardware from the local military headquarters as we were able, sacrificing what was once the elementary school tent to piece together a functioning command center, the capabilities of which were entirely unfamiliar to both Noria and Sam, who still refused to learn more than its most basic functions. Lucky for them, I don't need assistance. I do my work most days surrounded by the ancient hieroglyphics of sticky children. Crown drawings of indecipherable creatures are thumbtacked to the wall above my desk. Crudely formed bees and butterflies flutter from the ceiling. I hang my jacket on a rack painted in colors of the rainbow, slinging my gun holster around the back of a small yellow chair decorated with handprints. The disturbing dichotomy, whatever, is not lost on me. Still, between Nazir and Castle, who surprised me by revealing he was the mastermind behind most of Omega Point's innovative tech, we're close to designing an interface that would rival what we'd build at Sector 45. I buried myself in work for hours, hardly coming up for air, not even to eat. In addition to all else, I've been designing a safer plan that would help bring us in the assistance we need while mitigating our risk of exposure. Ella's most of all. Usually this kind of work is enough to hold my focus, but today, of all days, a day my mind continues to remind me was meant to be my wedding day. It doesn't matter what I do, I am distracted. I sigh, resting my hands on my thighs, too uncomfortable, aware of the little velvet box still tucked into my pocket. I unclench my fists. I scan the dining room again, restless with nervous energy. It's still surprising to me how easily I shed my solitude for the privilege of Ella's company. The truth is, I learned to enjoy the mechanics of life with her by my side. Her presence renders my world brighter, the details richer. It is impossible not to feel the difference when she is gone. Excuse me. Still, this has been a strange and difficult day. I know Ella loves me, and I know she means it when she says she wants to be with me. But today has been ripe not merely with disappointment, but also concerning a, a, uh, why can't y'all use words that I can pronounce? Obfuscations? I have no idea. Ella is hiding something from me, and I have been waiting all day for her to return so that I might ask her privately a single clarifying question that might resolve this incertitude. Until then, it's hard to know how to feel or what to believe. More simply, I miss her. I regret even relinquishing the dog. Upon my return from the graveside, I searched the grounds for a familiar face to find someone to take him, and despite my efforts, I couldn't find anyone I recognized. There's a great deal of work to do in the previously unregulated areas outside the sanctuary, so it's not surprising to see people gone. I was only surprised to find myself disappointed. All I've wanted for so long was a single moment of quiet, and now that I have it in abundance, I'm not sure I want it. The realization has quietly shocked me. Regardless, I was about to abandon the idea of bathing the animal when a nervous young woman approached me, her face as red as her hair, as she stammered aloud a suspicion that I might need help. I appreciated the effort on her part, but the conversation was far more from ideal. The girl turned out to be a part of a persistent, ridiculous subsection of people who here at the sanctuary, a lingering group of men and women who still insist on treating me like I'm some kind of hero. I fought off my father's supreme soldiers in a failed attempt at protecting Ella, and these well-meaning fools have somehow idealized this failure. One of the worst days of my life now fossilized in their memories as a day that should be celebrated. It makes me ill. They've romanticized me in their minds. These people romanticize the very idea of my existence and often objectify me in the process. Every time I looked this young woman in the eye, she would visibly tremble, her feelings both indecent and sincere, the mixture of which was almost too uncomfortable to recount. I thought she might be more at ease if I stared at the animal as I spoke, which I did, and which seemed to calm her. I told her about the dog, explaining that he needed a bath and food, and which she generously offered to take into her care. As I sensed no actual danger from the girl, I accepted her overture. "Does he have a name?" she'd asked. "He is a dog. You may call him a dog." The young woman froze at that. At our sudden eye contact, I watched her pupils dilate as she grappled with an emotional combination too often flung in my direction, abject terror and desire. It confirmed for me, then, what I've always known to be true, that most people are disappointing and should be avoided. She said nothing to me after that, only scooping up the reluctant, whining animal into her trembling arms and shuffling away. I've not seen either of them since. It would not be an exaggeration to say that this day has been a thorough disappointment. I pushed back my chair and get to my feet, taking the foil bowl to go. I planned to save the food adjacent mass for the dog, should I ever see him again. I glanced up at the large clock on the wall, nothing that I managed only to kill another 30 minutes. Quietly, I acknowledged I should accept this for Quietly, I acknowledge I should accept this day for the non-event it turned out to be, and as it appears unlikely I will see Ella tonight, I should go to bed. Still, I'm demoralized by this turn of events, so much so that it takes me a moment to realize Sam is calling my name. I pivot her in her direction. She's waving me over, but I have no interest in a conversation right now. I want nothing more than to retreat, fester in my wounds. Instead, I force myself to clear the short distance between us, unable to generate even a modicum of warmth as I approach. I stare at her by way of hello. Sam is even more exhausted than I first assumed, her eyes held up by lavender half-moons. Her skin is grayer than I've ever seen it, her short blonde hair limp falling into her face. She spares no time for formalities either. Have you read the recent incident reports from... She looks down at her papers, rubbing one eye with the palm of her hand. 18, 22, 36, 37, 142 through 223, and 305. Yes. Have you noticed what they all have in common? I sigh, feeling my body tense anew when I say yes. Sam folds her arms atop her stack of papers, peering up at me from her seat. Great. Then you'll understand why we need Juliet to tour the continent. She has to make appearances, physical appearances. No. They are riding in the streets, Warner. Sam's voice is unusually hard. Against us. Not against the reestablishment, against us. People are impatient and ungrateful, I say sharply. Worse, they are stupid. They don't understand that change takes time. Clearly, they assume that the fall of the reestablishment would bring instant peace and prosperity to the world, and in the 2 weeks since we've been in power, they can't understand why their lives haven't miraculously improved. Yes, okay, but the solution isn't in ignoring them. These people need hope. They need to see her face. She's done televised broadcasts. She's made a couple of local appearances. It's not enough, Sam says, cutting me off. Listen, we all know the only reason Juliet isn't doing more is because of you. You're so worried about keeping her safe that you're putting our entire movement in jeopardy. She did this, Warner. It was her choice to take on the reestablishment. It was her choice to carry this burden. The world needs her now, which means you have to get your shit together. You have to be braver than this. I stiffen at that, at the surgical precision of her blade. I say nothing. Sam exhales in the wake of my silence something like a laugh. You think I don't understand what it's like to be with someone whose life is constantly in danger? You think I don't understand how terrifying it is to watch them step foot out the door every day? Do you have any idea how many attempts have been made on Noria's life? Still, I say nothing. It's really fucking hard, she says angrily, surprising me with her language. Sam pushes both hands through her hair before rubbing her eyes again. It's really, really, really hard. Yes, I say quietly. She meets my eyes then. Look, I know you're not doing this on purpose. I know you only want the best for her, but you're holding her back. You're holding all of us back. I don't know exactly what you two have been through. Whatever it is, it must have been serious because Juliet's clearly more worried for you than she is for herself. But what? I frown. That's not... Trust me. She and I have had a lot of conversations about this. Juliet doesn't want to do anything to scare you. She thinks you're processing something right now. She wouldn't tell me what. And she's adamant that she won't do anything risky until she's sure you can handle it. Which means I need you to handle it now. I'm doing fine, I say, my jaw clenching. Wonderful. Sam generates a smile. If you're doing fine, go ahead and tell her that. Encourage Juliet to go on an international tour, or at minimum a national one. Juliet knows how to talk to crowds. When she's looking people in the eye, they believe her. I know you've seen it. In fact, you probably know better than anyone that no one cares more about these people than she does. She genuinely cares about their families, their futures, and right now the world needs a reminder. They need reassurance, which means you have to let her do her job. I feel my heart rate spike. I would never keep her from doing her job. I just want her to be safe. Yes, you prioritize her safety above all else to the detriment of the world. You're making decisions from a place of fear, Warner. You can't help but heal the planet if you're only thinking about what's best for one person. I never got into this to heal the planet, I said sharply. I have never pretended to care about the future of our pathetic civilization. If you ever took me For a revolutionary, that was your mistake. I see now that I have to make something clear. So remember this. I would happily watch the world go up in flames if anything happened to her. And if that's not enough for you, you can go to hell. Sam shoves back her chair so fast it makes a piercing, skin-crawling screech that echoes around the near-empty dining tent. She's on her feet now, boring a hole in the floor with the heat of her anger. The few faces still dotting the room turn to look at us. I feel their surprise, their mounting curiosity. Sam is diminutive in stature, but fierce when she chooses to be, and right now she looks as if she's considering killing me with her bare hands. You are not special, she says. You are not the only one of us who's ever suffered. You're not the only one who lies awake at night worrying for the safety of their loved ones. I have no sympathy for your pain or your problems. Good, I say, more than matching her anger, as long as we understand each other. Sam shakes her head and throws up her hands, looking for a moment like she might laugh or cry. What on earth does she see in you? You're nothing but a callous, cold-hearted narcissist. You don't care about anyone but yourself. I hope you know how lucky you are that Juliet tolerates your presence. You wouldn't even be here if it weren't for her. I sure as hell wouldn't vouch for you. I lower my eyes, absorbing these blows with studied indifference. My body is not unlike the moon, cratered so thoroughly by brutality it's hard to imagine it untouched by violence. Good night, I say quietly and turn to leave. I hear Sam sigh, her regret building as I walk away. Warner, wait, she says, calling after me. I'm sorry, that was over the line. It's been a long day. I didn't mean. I don't look back. Chapter 7. I'm sandwiched between two thin blankets on the frozen floor of this hospital room, eyes closed, pretending to sleep, when I hear the soft whine of the door, Ella's familiar presence entering the room. It's hours past midnight. She brings with her the faint smell of something slightly chemical, which confuses me, but more important, I feel her fear as she tiptoes into the space, all displaced by a sudden relief when she catches sight, no doubt, of my prone body. Relief. I don't understand. She is relieved to discover me asleep. She is relieved she doesn't have to speak with me. The pressure in my chest intensifies. I listen to the sounds of her shedding her shoes and clothes in the dark, wondering how best I might shatter the silence, bracing myself for her surprise, then disappointment to discover I'm awake. I give her a moment, hearing the familiar sounds of sheets rustling. I'm imagining her climbing into the narrow hospital bed, tucking herself under the covers. When her emotions pivot without warning, she experiences a sharp, stunning wave of happiness. Somehow, this only scares me more. Ella is not merely relieved, then, but happy to have evaded me. She's happy to be going to sleep without being disturbed. My heart races faster, dread multiplying. I'm almost afraid to say anything now, knowing that the sound of my voice would only prompt the demolition of her joy. Still, I have to speak with her. I need to know what's happening between us, and I'm preparing to say as much as when I hear her breathing change. She is already asleep. I have been lying awake, fully clothed, sinking into darkness for hours. Ella has fallen asleep in moments. I feel frozen, fastened to this cold floor by fear. Familiar pins and needles that were sparking to life in my limbs. My eyes fly open. I can't seem to breathe. I hadn't known what to do with the jewelry box in my pocket. I was afraid to leave it somewhere, worried it might be misplaced or discovered. It remains with me instead, branding my leg with its presence, reminding me of all that feels suddenly and terrifyingly lost. Unconsciously, I reach for an altogether different piece of jewelry in my fingers, finding the smooth stone of the jade ring in the dark, the piece so much a part of me now that I can't remember what my hand looks like without it. I spin the cold band around my pinky finger in a familiar repetitive motion, wondering whether it has been a mistake all these years to keep this token of grease so close to my skin. The ring had been a gift from my mother. It was the only present I'd ever received as a child, and yet the memories associated with this object are so dark and painful, reminders in every moment of my father's tyranny, my mother's suffering, my grandfather's betrayal. I have often wanted to lock away this memento of my tortured childhood. Touching it even now reminds me of versions of myself, 6-year-old, then 7, 8, 9, and on, that once clutched it desperately even as I screamed, explosive pain raging across my back over and over. For a long time I hadn't wanted to forget. The ring reminded me always of my father's brutality, of the hatred that motivated me to stay alive, if only to spite him. More than that, it is all I have left of my mother. And yet perhaps this ring has tethered me to my own darkness, this symbol of infinite repetition fated to conjure forever the agonies of my past. Sometimes I fear I will be trapped forever in this cycle, incapable of happiness, inseparable from my demons. I close my eyes to scenes from the day replaying as if on an automatic loop. I seem doomed to relive the events in perpetuity, combing them for answers, for evidence of anything that might explain what's happening to my life. And despite my best efforts to shut them out, I recall Sam's voice, then Kenji's. You're nothing but a callous, cold-hearted narcissist. I hope you know how lucky you are that Juliet tolerates your presence. I'm sick of your attitude. I'm sick of making sick excuses for your crappy behavior. I just don't know what she sees in you. What on earth does she see in you? Chapter 8. When I open my eyes, the light is filtering through the half-closed curtains, blinding me. I can tell just by its position in the room that the sun is new, the morning is young. I don't know when I fell asleep. I don't even know how I managed to accomplish this feat except through sheer exhaustion. My body succumbed to the need even as my mind refused, protesting this decision with a series of nightmares that begin to replay as I sit up, closing my eyes against the glare. I spent the night outrunning an indecipherable natural disaster. It was that vintage of vague dream element that makes sense only in the dream and none at all upon awakening. I couldn't stop running. I had no choice but to keep moving for fear of being decimated by the impending calamity, searching all the while for Ella from whom I had been separated. When I finally heard her voice, it was from high above. Ella was sitting in a tree far from danger, staring happily at the clouds as I ran for my life. The disaster, something like a tornado or tsunami or both, increased in intensity, and I picked up speed, unable to slow down long enough to speak with her or even to climb the tree, whose trunk was so impossibly tall I couldn't understand how she'd scaled it. In a desperate effort, I called her name, but she didn't hear me. She was turned away, laughing, and I realized then that Kenji was sitting in the tree with her. So was Nazira, who'd no doubt flew them both to safety. I screamed Ella's name once more, and this time she turned at the sound of my voice, meeting my eyes with a kind smile. I finally stopped then, falling to my knees from overexertion. Ella waved at me just as I was pulled under. A sharp knock at the hospital door has me upright in a moment, my mind on a delay uh, even as my instincts sharpen. I notice only then that Ella is not here. Her rumpled hospital sheets are the only evidence she ever was. I drag a hand down my face as I head for the door, faintly aware that I'm still in the clothes I was wearing yesterday. My eyes are dry, my stomach empty, my body exhausted. I am wrung out. I open the door, so surprised to see Winston's face that I take a step back. I seldom, if ever, speak with Winston. I've never had any specific reason to dislike him, but then he and I are ill acquainted. I don't even know if I've ever seen his face from so close a distance. Wow, he says, blinking at me. You look like shit. Good morning. Right, yeah, good morning. He takes a deep breath and attempts to smile, adjusting his black glasses for no reason but nerves. Winston, I'm baffled to discover, is very nervous to be near me. Sorry, I was just surprised, he says, rushing his words. You're usually really, put together. Anyway, you might want to take a shower before we get going. I'm so unable to process the absurdity or the audacity of this request that I close the door in his face, turn the lock. The pounding begins immediately after. Hey, he says, shouting to be heard. I'm serious. I'm supposed to take you to breakfast this morning, but I don't need a chaperone, I say, pulling off my sweater. This hospital room is one of the larger ones with an en-suite industrial bathroom/shower combination, and I don't need you to remind me to bathe. I didn't mean it as an insult. Damn. A nervous laugh. Literally everyone tried to warn me that you were hard to deal with, but I thought maybe they were exaggerating at least a little. That was my mistake. Listen, you look fine. You don't smell or anything. I just think you'll want to take a shower. Again, I don't need your advice on this matter. I'm stepping out of my pants, folding them carefully to contain the small box still trapped in the pocket. Leave. Come on, man. Don't make this difficult. I was the only one willing to come get you this morning. Everyone else was too afraid. Even Kenji said he was too tired today to deal with your shit. I hesitate then. I abandon the bathroom, returning to the closed door in only my boxer briefs. Come get me for what? I feel Winston startled at the sound of my voice so close. He equivocates, saying only, Yeah, I can't actually tell you. A terrifying unease moves through me at that. Winston's guilt and fear is palpable, his anxiety growing. Something is wrong. I glance one last time at Ella's empty bed before unlatching the lock. I'm only dimly aware of my appearance that I'm opening the door in my underwear. I'm reminded swiftly of this fact when Winston does an exaggerated double take upon seeing me. He quickly averts his eyes. Ugh. Fucking hell, why did you take off your clothes? What is going on? I ask coldly. Where's Juliet? What? I don't know. Winston is turned away entirely now, pinching the bridge of his nose between his thumb and index finger. And I'm not allowed to tell you what's going on. Why not? He looks up at that, meeting my eyes for only a nanosecond before turning sharply away. A mottled heat rushes up his neck, burns his ears. Please, for the love of God, he says, yanking off his glasses to rub at his face. Put on some clothes. I can't talk to you like this. Then leave. Winston only shakes his head, crossing his arms against his chest. I can't. And I can't tell you what's going on because it's supposed to be a surprise. The fight leaves my body in a single gust, leaving me lightheaded. A surprise? Can you please go take a shower? I'll wait for you outside the MT. Just show up with your clothes on, please. I let the door slam shut between us, then stare at it, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. There's a wave of relief from Winston, then a flicker of happiness. He seems excited. I finally walk away, stepping out of my underwear and tossing it into a nearby laundry bin before entering the quickly steaming bathroom. I catch my reflection in the floor-length mirror affixed to the wall, my face and body being devoured slowly by steam. It's supposed to be a surprise. For a protracted moment, I can't seem to move. My eyes, I notice, are dilated in this dim light, darker. I look slightly different to myself, my body hardening by degrees every day. I've always been toned, but this is different. My face has lost any lingering softness. My chest is broader. Are more my legs more firmly planted. These slight changes in muscle definition is in vascularity. I can see myself getting older. Our research for the reestablishment indicated that there was once a time when the 20s were considered the prime years of youth. I always struggle to visualize this world, one wherein teenagers were treated like children, where those in their 20s felt young and free, their future boundless. It sounded like fiction. And yet, I have often played this game in the privacy of my mind. In another world, I might live in a house with my parents. In another world, I might not even be expected to have a job. In another world, I might not know the weight of death, might never have held a gun, shot a bullet, killed so many. The thoughts register as absurd even as I think them. That in an alternate universe, I might be considered some kind of adolescent free from responsibility. Strange. Was there ever truly a world wherein parents did the job expected of them? Was there ever a reality in which the adults were not murdered merely for resisting fascism, leaving their young children behind to raise them themselves? Here we are, nearly all of a contingent of orphans roaming, then running this broken planet. I often imagine what it would be like to step into such an alternate reality. I wonder what it would be like to set down the weight of darkness in exchange for a family, a home, a refuge. I abandon my reflection to step under the hot water. I've never thought I'd come close to touching such a dream. I never thought I'd be able to trust or love or find peace. I've never been searching for so long for a pocket of quiet to inhabit, a place to exist unencumbered. I always wanted a door I might close for even a moment against the violence of the world. I didn't understand then that a home is not always a place. Sometimes it's a person. I would sleep on the cold floor of our hospital room for the rest of my life if it meant staying by Ella's side. I can forego quiet. I can compartmentalize my need for space, my desire for privacy, but to lose her. I close my eyes against the water pressure, the jet forging tributaries against my face, my body. The heat is a balm welcome against my skin. I want to burn off the residue of yesterday. I want an explanation for all that happened, or even to forget it altogether. When things are out of alignment between myself and Ella, I can't focus. The world seems colorless, my bones too large for my body. All I want, more than anything else, is to bridge the distance between us. I want this uncertainty gone. I turn my face up toward the jet, closing my eyes as the water pelts my face. I breathe deep, drawing in water and steam, trying to steady my heartbeat. I know better than to be optimistic, but even as I forbid myself to think it, I cannot help but reflect that the word surprise is seldom associated with something negative. It might have been a poor choice of words on Winston's part, but his moment of excitement seemed to confirm this choice. He might have chosen a more pejorative term had he wished to manage my expectations of disappointment. Despite my every silent protest, hope takes hold of me, forces me from the dregs of my composure. I lean my forehead against the cool tile, the water beating the scars on my back. I can hardly feel it, the sensations there dulled from nerve damage at scar tissue. I straighten at a sudden sound. I turn, heart racing at the soft shudder of the bathroom door opening. I already know it's her. I always feel her before I can see her, and when I see her, when she opens the bathroom door and stands there smiling at me, my relief is so acute. I reach for the wall, bracing myself against the cold tile. Ella is holding 2 mugs of coffee, dressed the way she often is, in a soft sweater and jeans. Her dark brown hair is so long now it skims her elbows. She grins at me, then disappears into the outer room, and I start to follow her, nearly slipping in my haste. I catch the door frame to steady myself, watching as she rests the coffee mugs on a nearby table. She slips off her tennis shoes, tugs off her socks. When she pulls her sweater over her head, I have a minor heart attack. She's facing away from me, but her back is bare. She's not wearing a bra. "You were sound asleep this morning," she says, glancing over her shoulder at me as she unbuttons her jeans. "I was afraid to wake you up. I went out to get us some coffee, but the line at breakfast was really long. I'm sorry I wasn't here." She shimmies out of her jeans, then tugging them down over her hips. She's wearing a scrap of lace masquerading as underwear, and I watch immobilized as she bends over to yank off the last of the jeans, pulling her feet free. When she turns around, I'm struggling to breathe. She's so beautiful I can hardly look at her. I feel as if I've stepped into some strange dream. The debilitating fears that gripped me yesterday somehow forgotten in a moment. Heat courses through me at a dangerous speed, my mind unable to grasp what my body clearly understands. There's so much I need to say to her, so much I remember wanting to ask her, but when she steps out of her underwear and walks through the open bathroom door into the shower and then directly into my arms, I remember nothing. My brain shuts down. Her soft naked body is pressed against every hard inch of mine, and suddenly I want nothing but this. The need is so great it actually feels like it might break me. "Hey, handsome," she says, peering up at me. She runs her hands down my back, then lower. I can hear her smile. "You look too good in here to be all by yourself." I can't speak. She takes my hand, still smiling, and rests it against her breast before slowly guiding it down her body. She's showing me exactly what she wants from me, how she wants it. But I already know. I know where she wants my hands. I know where she wants my mouth. I know where she wants me most of all. I take her into my arms, hitching her leg around my thigh before I kiss her, breaking her open. She's so soft, slick, and eager in my arms, kissing me back with an urgency that drives me wild. I tilt her head back as I break away, kissing her neck, then lower, slowly, carefully, replacing my hands with my mouth everywhere on her body. Her desperate anguish sounds send shock waves of pleasure through me, setting me on fire. She reaches behind her, searching for a purchase against the tile wall, her back arching with pleasure. I love the way she loses herself with me, the way she lets go, trusting me completely with her needs, her pleasure. I never feel closer to her than when we're so entwined, when there's nothing but openness and love between us. She touches me, then gently wraps her hand around me, and I squeeze my eyes shut, hardly able to contain the sound I make, low in my throat. All I can think is in this moment is that I don't want this to be over. I want to be trapped in here for hours, her slick body against mine, her voice in my ear begging me, as she is now, to make love to me, to make love to her. "Please," she says, still touching me. "Aaron." I sink down, without warning, onto my knees. Ella steps back, confused for all of a second before her eyes widen with understanding. "Come here, love." Ella is hesitant at first. I feel her sudden shyness, desire, and self-consciousness colliding, and I study her as she stands there, the sheen of her wet curves in this light, her long dark hair painted to her skin. Hot drops of water race down her breast, skim her navel. She's dripping wet, so gorgeous I hardly know what to do with myself. She makes her way over to me slowly, her cheeks pink with heat, her eyes dark with need. I intercept her once she's standing in front of me, planting my hands around her hips. I look up at her in time to see her blush, a moment of self-consciousness gone in seconds. She's soon gasping my name, her hands in my hair at the back of my neck. She's already so wet, so ready for me. The sight of her, the taste of her, it's too much. I feel like I'm detaching from my mind as I watch her lose herself. I can feel her legs shaking as she cries out for more from me, and when she comes, she stifles her scream in my hair. I'm on my claws, butthead. I'm on my feet a moment later, capturing the last of her cries with my mouth, kissing her as she trembles in my arms, her harsh breath slowing down. Ella reaches for me, even then touches me until I'm blind with pleasure. She pushes me gently up against the wall, kissing my throat, running her hands down my chest, my torso, and then she sinks to her knees in front of me, taking me into her mouth. I make a tortured sound, grasping at the wall, hardly able to breathe. The pleasure is white hot, all encompassing. I can't think around it. I can hardly see straight, and for a moment I think I've actually lost my mind, separated from my body. Ella, I gasp. I want you, she says, breaking away, her words hot against my skin. Please, now. My heart still pounding in my chest, I step aside, turn off the shower. Ella startles, a surprise even as she gets to her feet. I step past her to grab a towel for each of us, and she accepts hers with some confusion, refusing to dry herself off. But I scoop her up without a word, and she squeaks, half laughing as I carry her over to the single bed in our room. I lay her down carefully, and she looks up at me, eyes wide with wonder, her wet hair plastered to her skin, water dripping everywhere. I couldn't care less if we flooded the room. I join her on the bed, carefully straddling her damp, gleaming body before leaning down to kiss her. This knee, too, so brutal, it's almost indistinguishable from anguish. I touch her while I kiss her, stroking her slowly at first, then deeper, more urgent. She whimpers against my mouth, urging me closer, lifting her hips. I move inside her with painstaking slowness, the pleasure so profound it seems to sever my connection to reality. God, you feel so good, I say, hardly recognizing the ragged sound of my own voice. I can't believe you're mine. She only moans my name in response, her arms wrapped tight around my neck as she pulls me closer. I can feel her growing torment, her need for release as great as my own. We find a rhythm as we move. Ella hooks her legs around my waist, and she doesn't stop kissing me. My mouth, my cheeks, my jaw, any part of me she can reach. Her feverish touches interrupted only by desperate pleas begging me for more, faster, harder. I love you, she says desperately. I love you so much. I let go when I feel her come apart, losing myself in the moment with a stifled cry. My body seizing as it comes to this, the most acute form of pleasure. I bury my face in her chest, listening to the sound of her racing heart for only a moment before disengaging myself for fear of crushing her. Somehow the two of us managed just barely to squeeze it together on the narrow bed. Ella tucks herself into my side, pressing her face against my chest, and I reach for the insubstantial covers, drawing them up around us. She grazes my chest with the tips of her fingers, drawing patterns, and this single action ignites a low heat deep inside me. I could do this all day. I don't care what happened yesterday. I don't need an explanation. None of it seems to matter anymore. Not when she's here with me. Not when her naked body is wrapped up in mine. Not when she draws her hands along my skin, touching me with a tenderness that tells me everything I need to know. All I want is this. Her. Us. I don't even realize I've fallen asleep until her voice startles me awake. Aaron? She whispers. It takes me a moment to open my eyes to find my voice. I turn toward her as if in a dream, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Yes, love. There's something I want to show you. Chapter 9. The morning is cool and serene, everything limned in golden light. Touches of dew dot leaves and grass, the sun still stretching itself into the sky. The air is fresh with scents I cannot adequately describe. It's an amalgam of early morning fragrances, the familiar smell of the world shuddering awake. That I notice these things at all is unusual. It is clear, even to me, that my mood is greatly improved. Ella is holding my hand. She's been buoyant this morning. She got dressed even more quickly than I did, tugging me out the door with an enthusiasm that almost made me laugh. Winston, who we discover waiting for us just outside the medical tent, possesses a range of emotions diametrically opposed. He says nothing when Ella and I approach, first taking in the two of us, then glancing at his watch. Hey, Winston, Ella says, still beaming. What are you doing here? Who, me? He points at himself, feigning shock. Oh, nothing. Just waiting out here for this jackass. He shoots me a dark look. For over an hour. What? Why? Ella frowns. And don't call him a jackass. I process this exchange with some confusion. I'd not realized until just that moment how much I'd been hoping Winston's appearance at my door had something to do with Ella. I see now that it does not. Winston came to our room this morning. I explained to her. He told me he had a surprise for me. Ella's frown deepens. A surprise? An hour ago. Winston adds angrily. Yes, I say, meeting his eyes, an hour ago. He visibly clenches his jaws. You really are the worst. You know that? I mean, everyone is always telling me that you're the worst. Not that I've ever doubted it, but wow, this morning has just proven to me how completely self-absorbed you are. I can't believe I even offered to come get... Winston? Ella's voice is quiet, carefully controlled, but her anger is loud. I turn to look at her, not surprised exactly, but yes, surprised. I'm still unfamiliar with this dynamic. I'm still not used to someone taking my side. Look, she says. Warner might be too nice to say anything when you talk to him like that. Winston sounds for a moment like he's choking. But I'm not, so don't. Not only because it's awful, but because you're wrong. Bear with me. I need to get comfortable here. I'm just not comfy. Okay, where was I? Winston is still staring at Ella, dumbfounded. I'm sorry, you think he's too nice to say anything? You think the reason Warner gets all quiet and gives people death stares is because he's too nice to say anything? Winston glances at me. Him? I am smiling. Ella is indignant. Oh, excuse me. Ella is indignant. Sorry for the angle, but this is easier. It's just easier. Okay, where was I? Ella is indignant, Winston is furious, and I am smiling, very nearly laughing. Yes, Ella says, refusing to back down. You guys are too comfortable bullying him. Winston looks around himself a moment, for all the world as if he's entered some alternate universe. He opens his mouth to say something, looks at me, looks away, and then crosses his arms. You heard what he was like, right? He finally says to Ella. When you were gone, you heard all the stories about how he... Yes, she says, her voice darker now. I heard exactly what happened. And? So you know about all the people he murdered and how horrible he was to everyone and how he made a ton of people here cry and how Nora nearly shot him for it. And you think we are the ones bullying him? That's what you think is happening here? Clearly. And you, Winston says, turning to face me, his eyes narrowing with barely suppressed anger, you agree with this assessment of your character? I smile wider. Yes. Wow, you really are an asshole. Winston. He made me wait out here for an hour. And this was after I told him I had a surprise for him and after he slammed the door in my face multiple times. Winston shakes his head. You should have heard him. He's so scathing, so rude. Hey, what the hell is going on over here? Kiji is stalking toward us. And where have you been? He says to Ella. We're all waiting for you guys. Waiting for us? I ask. For what? Kiji throws up his arms in frustration. Oh my God, you haven't told him yet? He says to Ella. What are you waiting for? Listen, I thought this idea was dumb to begin with, but now it's just getting ridiculous. I was going to tell him this morning, she says, tensing. I just haven't had a chance yet. We've been busy. I bet you were busy. I bet you were, princess, Kiji says, a muscle ticking in his jaw. Why is your hair wet? I took a shower. You took a shower? He says, eyes narrowing. Really? Okay, what is going on? I ask, glancing between Ella and the others as a familiar dread moves up my spine. Is this about the surprise? The surprise? Kenji is confused only a moment before understanding the lights in his eyes. He looks at Winston. Wait, I thought we sent you to get him an hour ago. Winston explodes. This is exactly what I've been trying to say. This son of a bitch made me wait outside the MT for an hour, even though I was perfectly nice to him despite my better judgment. Fucking hell, Kenji mutters angrily, pushing his hands through his hair. As if we didn't have enough going on today. He turns to me. You made Winston wait an entire hour just to give you the damn dog? The dog? I frown. The dog is the surprise? How is it a surprise if I already know it exists? Wait, what dog? Ella looks at me, then at the others. You mean the dog from yesterday? Yeah? Kenji sighs. Yara took the dog last night. She gave him a bath, scrubbed him up, she got him a collar and everything. She really wanted it to be a surprise for Warner and made us promise not to say anything about it. The dog is wearing a stupid bow on his head right now. Ella has stiffened beside me. Who's Yara? Her faint, almost undetectable note of jealousy, possessiveness, only cements my smile in place. You know Yara? Kenji says to Ella. Redhead, tall, runs the school group. You've talked to her? Kenji catches sight of my face and cuts himself off. And what the hell are you smiling about? You've messed up our entire schedule, dickhead. We're an hour behind on everything, and all because... Stop, Ella says angrily. Stop calling him names. He's not a dickhead. He's not a jackass. He's not self-absorbed. I don't know why you guys think it's okay to just say whatever terrible things you want about him to his face, as if he's made of stone. You all do it. You all insult him over and over again. He just takes it. He doesn't even say anything, and somehow you've convinced yourself it's okay. Why? He's a real flesh and blood person. Why don't you care? Why don't you think he has feelings? What the hell is wrong with you? My smile is gone in an instant. I experience a strange pain then, a sensation not unlike dissolving slowly from the inside. This feeling sharpens to a point, piercing me. I turn to look at Ella. She seems to sense the change in me. For a moment, they all do. I feel a vague mortification at the realization that I've somehow exposed myself. The proceeding silence is brief but torturous, and when Ella wraps her arms around my waist, hugging me close, even in the midst of all this, I hear Winston clear his throat. Tentatively, I lift a hand to her head, drawing it slowly down her hair. I worry sometimes that my love for her will expand beyond the limitations of my body, that it will one day kill me with its heft. Kenji averts his eyes. He is subdued when he says, yeah, anyway, last I checked, the dog was in the dining tent eating breakfast with everyone. Another awkward beat, and Winston sighs. Should I go get Yara? Do we even have time? I don't think so, Kenji says. I think we should tell her to keep the dog until after. After what? I ask, trying to read the maelstrom of emotions around me and failing. What's going on? Kenji blows out of breath. He looks exhausted. Jay, you have to tell him. She pulls away from me, panicked in an instant. But I had a plan. I was going to take him there first. We don't have time for this, princess. You waited too long, and now it's officially a problem. Tell him what's happening. Right now? While you're standing here? Yes? No way. She shakes her head. You have to at least give us some privacy. Absolutely not. Kenji crosses his arms. I've given you tons of privacy, and you've proven you can't be trusted. If I leave you two alone together, you'll either end up in bed or accomplish nothing, neither of which are conducive to our goals. Was that really necessary? I say, irritated. Did you really feel the need to comment on our private life? When it costs us an hour of our lives, yes, Winston says, moving in an act of solidarity to stand next to Kenji. He even crosses his arms against his chest, matching Kenji's stance. Go ahead. Tell him. Ella looks nervous. Winston and Kenji are an irritated, impatient audience. They stare us down, unrelenting, and I don't even know whether to be angry about it, because the truth is I want to know what's going on too. I want Ella to tell me what's happening. I look from her to them, my heart pounding in my chest. I have no idea what she's about to say. No idea whether this revelation will be good or bad. Though her nerves seem to indicate something is wrong, I brace myself as I watch her take a deep breath. Okay, she says, exhaling. Okay, another deep breath, and she remembers to look at me, this time pasting an anxious smile on her face. So I didn't want to tell you like this, but I'd been thinking for a little while about how to do this in the best possible way, because I wanted everything to be right, right for both of us, and also I didn't want it to be anticlimactic. I didn't want this big thing to happen and then it was just like we go back to the status quo. I wanted to feel special, like something was going to change, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. It was supposed to be a surprise, but it just wasn't ready in time, and if I told you about it, it wouldn't have been a surprise anymore. And Kenji kept insisting that I tell you anyway, but I'm sorry about yesterday, by the way, and I'm sorry about Noria. I've been planning this whole thing with her since I woke up, practically, but she wasn't supposed to say anything to you, and she knows that she wasn't supposed to say anything to you because she and I had an agreement that I was supposed to tell you what was going on. But yesterday I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, and I was waiting for more information because we were still trying really hard to make everything work in time, but I know how important it is to you. Jesus fucking Christ, Winston mutters. Kenji shouts, "You two are getting married today." I turn sharply, stunned, to look at them. Kenji, what the hell? You were taking too long. We're getting married today? I turn back to meet Ella's eyes, my heart pounding now for an entirely new reason, a better reason. We're getting married today? Yes, she says, blushing fiercely. I mean, only if you want to. I smile at her then. Smile so wide I start laughing, disbelief rendering me foreign even to myself. I hardly recognize the sound. The sensations moving through my body right now, it's hard to explain. The relief flooding my veins is intoxicating. I feel as if someone punched a hole through my chest in the best possible way. This is some kind of madness. I'm trying, but I can't stop laughing. Huh, says Winston quietly. I didn't even know his face could do that. Yeah, Kenji says. It's super weird the first time you see it. I can't look away. I'm trying to look away and I can't. It's like if a baby was born with a full set of teeth. Yes, exactly. It's exactly like that. But nice too. Yeah, nice too. Hey, did you know he had dimples? I didn't know he had dimples. Come on, man, that's old news. Could you two just please be quiet for a second? Ella says, squeezing her eyes shut. Just for a second? Kenji and Winston mime zipping their mouths shut before taking a step back, holding their hands up in surrender. Ella bites her lip before meeting my eyes. So, she says, what do you think? She unclasps her hands. Are you busy this morning? There's still something I want to show you, something I've been working on for the last few. I take her in my arms and she laughs, breathlessly, just until she meets my eyes. Her smile is soon replaced by a softness in her expression that likely mirrors my own. Stop! I could still feel the outline of that little velvet box against my leg. I've been carrying it with me everywhere, too afraid to leave it behind, too afraid to lose hope. I love you, I whisper. When I kiss her, I breathe her in, inhaling the scent of her skin as I draw my hands down her back, pulling her tighter. Her response is immediate. Her small hands move up my chest to claim my face, holding me close as she deepens the kiss, standing on tiptoe as she slowly twines her arms around my neck. The pilot light in my body catches fire. I break away reluctantly and only because I remember we have an audience. Still, I press my forehead to hers, keeping her close. I'm smiling again, like a common idiot. Okay, well, that took a gross turn. Is it over yet? I had to close my eyes. I don't know. I think it might be over, but if I were you, I'd keep my eyes shut for another minute just in case. Can you two keep your commentary to yourselves? I say, pivoting to face them. Is it so impossible for you to just be happy? For the words die in my throat. Winston and Kenji are both bright-eyed and beaming, the two of them failing to fight back enormous smiles. Congratulations, man, Kenji says softly. His sincerity is so unexpected it strikes me before I've had a chance to armor myself, and the consequences leave me reeling. An unfamiliar, overwhelming heat erupts in my head, in my chest, pricking the whites of my eyes. Ella takes my hand. I can't help but study Kenji's face. I'm astonished by the kindness there, the happiness he does nothing to hide. It becomes more obvious by the moment that he's played a larger role in executing Ella's plan than I might have suspected, and I experience the truth then, feel it clearly for the first time, the realization like a physical jolt. Kenji genuinely wants me to be happy. Thank you, I say to him. He smiles, but it's only a flicker of movement. Everything else is in his expression, in the tight nod he gives me by way of response. Anytime, he says quietly. There's a beat of silence, broken only by the sound of Winston sniffing. All right, okay. That was a really beautiful moment, but you guys need to knock it off before I start crying, he says, laughing even as he tugs off his glasses to rub at his eyes. Besides, we still have a shit ton of work to do. Work, I say, searching the sky for the sun. Of course. It can't be much later than 8 in the morning, but I'm usually at my desk much earlier. I'll need to make a quick stop at the command center. How long do you think we'll be gone today? I have to reschedule some calls. There are time-sensitive materials I'm supposed to deliver today, and if I... Not that kind of work, Kenji says, a strange smile on his face. You don't need to worry about that today. It's all been taken care of. Taken care of? How? Julie had already notified everyone last night. Obviously, we can't check out of work completely, but we've divvied up today's responsibilities. We're all going to take shifts. Not you two, obviously. Both your schedules have been cleared for the day. Somehow this is a greater surprise than everything else. If our schedules have been cleared, that means today wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. It means things that didn't just serendipitously align in time to make it happen. This was orchestrated, premeditated. I don't think I understand, I say slowly. As much as I appreciate the time off, this shouldn't take much more than an hour. We only need an efficient a couple of witnesses. Ella doesn't even have a dress. Noria said there was no time to make food or a cake or even spare people to help set up, so I won't. Ella squeezes my hand and I meet her eyes. I know we'd agreed to do something really small, she says softly. I know you weren't expecting much, but I thought you might like this better. I stare at her, dumbfounded. Like what better? As if on cue, Brendan pops his white blonde head around a corner. Morning, everyone. All right to bring everyone through, or do you lot need another minute? Winston lights up at the side of him, assuring Brendan that we need just a few more minutes. Brendan says, Roger that, and promptly disappears. I turn to Ella, my mind whirring. Save the birthday cake she surprised me with last month. I have very little in my life to offer me a frame of reference for this experience. My brain is at war with itself, while incapable of understanding what now seems obvious. Ella has organized something elaborate, in secret. All of her earlier evasiveness, her half-truths and missing explanations, my fear that she'd been hiding something from me. Suddenly everything makes sense. How long have you been planning this? I ask, and Ella visibly tenses with excitement, emanating the kind of joy I've only ever felt in the presence of small children. It nearly takes my breath away. She wraps her arms around my waist, peering up at me. Do you remember when we were on the plane ride home? She says. And the adrenaline wore off, and I started kind of losing my mind, and I kept looking at the bone sticking out my leg and screaming. Of all things, this was not what I was expecting her to say. Yes, I say carefully. I have no interest in recalling the events of that plane ride or discussing them. I remember. And do you remember what I said to you? I look away, sighing as I stare at a point in the distance. You said you couldn't wear a wedding dress with part of your bone sticking out. Yeah, she says and laughs. Wow, I was pretty out of it. It's not funny, I whisper. No, she says, drawing her hands up my back. No, it's not funny, but it was strange how nothing was really making sense in my head. We'd just been through hell, but all I could think as I stared at myself was how impractical it was to be bleeding so much. I told you I couldn't marry you if the bleeding didn't stop, because then I'd get blood all over my dress and your suit, and then we'd both just be covered in blood, and everything we touched would get bloody, and you said you'd marry me right then. You said you'd marry me with my bleeding teeth, with a visibly broken leg, with dried blood on my face, with blood dripping from my ears. I flinched at that, at the memory of what my father put her through, what her own parents did to her. Ella suffered and sacrificed so much for this world, all to bring the reestablishment to its knees, all because she cares so much about this planet and the people in it. I feel suddenly ill. What I hate, perhaps more than anything else, is that it doesn't stop. The demands on her body never stop. It doesn't seem to matter what side of history we're on, good or evil, everyone asks for more of her. Even now, after the fall of the reestablishment, the people and their leaders still want more from her. They don't seem to care that she's only one person or that she's already given so much. The more she gives, the more they require, and the quicker their gratitude shrivels up, the desiccated remains of which become something else altogether, expectation. If it were up to them, they'd keep taking from her until they've bled her dry, and I will never allow that to happen. Aaron? Finally, I meet her eyes. I meant what I said, love. I was hideous. You have never been hideous. I was a monster. She smiles as she says this. I had that huge gash in my arm. The skin on my hands had split open. My nose wouldn't stop bleeding. My eyes wouldn't stop bleeding. I even had a freshly sutured finger. I was Frankenstein's monster. You remember from that book? Ella, please, we don't have to talk about this. And I couldn't stop screaming. I was in so much pain, and I was so upset that I wouldn't stop bleeding. And I kept saying the craziest things, and you just sat next to me and listened. You answered every ridiculous question I asked like I wasn't completely out of my mind. For hours, I still remember, Aaron. I remember everything you said to me. Even after I passed out, I heard you on a loop in my dreams. It was like your voice got caught in my head. She pauses. I can only imagine what that experience must have been like for you. I shake my head. It wasn't about me. My experience doesn't matter. Of course it does. It matters to me. You don't get to be the only one who worries about the person you love. I get to do that too, she says, breaking away to better look at me in the eye. You spend so much time thinking about what's best for me. You're always worried about my safety and my happiness and the things I might need. Why don't I get to do that for you? Why don't I get to think about your happiness? I am happy, love. You make me happy. She looks away at that, but when she meets my eyes again, she's fighting tears. But if you can marry me however you want it, you'd choose to do it differently, wouldn't you? Ella. I whisper, tugging her back into my arms. Sweetheart, why are you crying? I don't care about having a wedding. It doesn't matter to me. I'll marry you as you are right now, in the clothes we're wearing, right where we're standing. But if you could do it however you wanted, you'd do it differently. You'd do it better than that, wouldn't you? Well, yes, I falter. I mean, if it were a different world, maybe if things were different for us, if we had more time or more resources, and maybe one day we'll have a chance to do it over again. But right now, no, she shakes her head. I don't want to do it over again. I don't want you to look back on our wedding day as a placeholder for something else or for what might have been. I want us to do it right the first time. I want to walk down an aisle to reach you. I want you to see me in a pretty dress. I want someone to take our picture. I want you to have that. You deserve to have that. But how? I look up, distracted by the sounds of movement, voices. A crowd of people is moving toward us, and Nazira and Brendan lead the charge. Lilly and Ian and Leah and Adam and James and Castle and Noria and Sam and dozens of others. They're all holding things. Bouquets of flowers and covered trays of food and colorful boxes and folded linens, and my blood pressure seems to plummet at the sight, leaving me dangerously lightheaded. I take a sharp breath, try to clear my head. When I speak, I hardly recognize my voice. Ella, what did you do? She only smiles at me, eyes shining with feeling. How did you find so many flowers? Where? All right, Winston says, holding up his hands. He sniffs twice, and I see then that his eyes are red. No more divulging secrets. We're done here. Kenji, I notice, is looking determinedly away from us, all of us. He clears his throat then, still staring at the sky, when he says, For what it's worth, bro, I tried to get her to tell you I don't approve of this whole surprise wedding nonsense. I told her, I said, if it were me, I'd want to know. Finally, Kenji meets my eyes. But she wouldn't listen. She said it had to be a surprise. I said, you're going to go back to your room tonight smelling like paint, and he's going to know. The man is not an idiot. And she was like, blah, 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 blah. He's not going to know, blah, blah, blah. I'm the queen of the world, blah, blah. Kenji! What? Ella's fists are clenched as she looks like she might punch him in the face. Please, stop speaking. Why? What'd I just say? Paint. Of course. I thought you smelled like paint. Of course. I thought you smelled something faintly chemical last night. I wasn't sure what it was, though. What? Ella says, crestfallen. How? I thought you were asleep. I shake my head, smiling now, though mostly for her benefit. Ella's guilt is palpable and multiplying quickly. What was the paint for? Nope. We're not doing that right now. You guys ready to get started? Winston claps his hands together. Good. Kenji and I will lead the way. How much more? Oh my gosh. I still have a ways to go. So yeah, I'm going to stop it right here. So later.